Know that you've been listening to the announcement today, to the investment that Alberta is making in crude by rail. What do you think about this strategy?
Oh, there's so many things that just, every time she opened her mouth, I had something to counter it with. It's
like
amazing
what?
How she's wordsmithing.
But like what? I mean, it sounds like a right strategy to put money to work.
Let's blow this right up to the highest level first, and we'll go back to the Kinder Morgan deal and this deal, okay? Kinder got announced that they wanted out and they want a buyer. And the government said that if there's no buyer, we will buy it. Well, that put them in a position of weakness in negotiating when no one else showed up to the table. And they got pillaged clearly by Kinder, and nothing can refute that now. It's a joke. I mean, we're a year past now, another year before we even start to put it in the ground, 30% higher costs, and this thing is not going to have economic benefit, and it cost Canadians. It did not help us. This government last fall said they were going to buy rail cars and they were going to move oil. And the rail companies probably went, well, really? Whose rails are you going to use? And whose locomotives are you going to use? So the government went out and said that, and then went to the rail companies and negotiated.
Okay,
and she kept saying, don't forget whose resource this is.
Right, but at the end of the day,
this is
Rafi,
your resource. This is Albertan's.
But what you're saying then is that she might not be the best negotiator. But let me ask you this. Is it not the right strategy, given the lack of pipeline capacity right now, that this is the right move for Alberta's energy policy?
No, I think all their energy should have been spent on trying to cure the illness, not trying to keep us alive with the illness. The cure is to get the pipelines. And she never even talks about that. I need a government that is fighting to get the pipelines built. And there is nothing being done. Instead, what we have is governments creating more and more interference in the private sector and costing us more and more. She's going to spend $3.7 billion of my money, of Albertans' money, to try to create $2.2 billion of profit in the long term on her zero risk policy. I'm sorry, as an investor, that's irresponsible. A regulator would probably take my license away for making a statement like that. Zero risk, that's ridiculous.
But let's go back for 1 second, because she certainly has tried to gather and gain support for pipelines being built. That hasn't come to fruition yet.
How?
In many conversations that she's been trying to pressure pressures might not be the right word, but try to gain support from other provinces and certainly from the federal government to recognize that this is a national issue. She's absolutely done that.
They've gone nowhere.
Well, they've gone nowhere, but it's not. But it's not quite. Is it accurate to say she hasn't done anything?
We've got to start putting on the gloves.
But if that hasn't happened,
the Federation no longer functions.
Why isn't this a solution?
And so all we keep doing is to fix put bandages on. We create these little deals where governments are suddenly owning more and more of our business and influencing and controlling how a free market business should operate. This business was a complete free market industry 4 years ago, and now federally and provincially, it's becoming more and more provincially and federally owned. And it's just totally squeezing the oil companies' ability to look like investable businesses. How is this going to convince investment into coming into Alberta and coming into the oil and gas industry? Foreign investment, and trust me, look, I'm an investor. So if I was on the outside looking in, I'd be like, no, this is not something I want to be involved in. This is complex. This is CP and CN, clearly saying we're not going to be the welcome mat here. So we're going to make sure we are covered off here for sure. So here's what it's going to cost you to make sure we can provide you with what you need. And by the way, you need us because you went ahead of time and said you're going to do this without consulting with us first. So they negotiated from the position of strength. She negotiated from a position of weakness. with my dollars, and I'm offended by that.
So, Rafi, what do you think, though, the company's response is going to be to this news today with respect to their production and perhaps being more optimistic that they can actually now ship more, perhaps at a better price?
Yeah, well, when and if it finally starts to develop and you start to move some oil around, and you remember, she's saying it's going to narrow the differential but there is a certain amount of the benefit from that differential that is no longer now going to the producer. It's effectively going to go to CN and CP. So all we're doing is creating an expensive solution that doesn't help the producer from a margin perspective. It helps them from a production perspective. The margin is being split up amongst more parties, and there's an additional cost that Albertans have to pay as well, to the tune of $3.6 billion. And for the government to sit and say, on top of all that, the product at the end result is going to have this nirvana sale and guaranteed with no risk, I think is ludicrous.
What do you